am an Atlanta native. I am born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I love my city. But let's be clear, I'm a Westside resident. And anybody that you talk to knows that I am all things Westside. One of the most well-renowned Westside residents once said, "It is much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee a livable income and a good, solid job. It is much easier to guarantee the right to vote than it is to guarantee the right to live in sanitary, decent housing conditions. It is much easier to integrate a public park than it is to make genuine, quality, integrated education a reality." This Westside resident was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he and his wife, Coretta Scott King, were residents in Vine City. At the time that he made this speech at Stanford University, The Other America, in 1967, he had led protests on housing conditions in Vine City, and he laid out a blueprint for genuine equality and demanded that the nation adhere to it. He was talking about Atlanta. He was talking about things happening right here. But sadly, our hometown is in headlines that read, "Studies find greater income inequality in nation's thriving city." And Atlanta's at the top. Study reveals Atlanta has nation's worst upward mobility rate. Sprawl and racism, are they the culprits of Atlanta's woeful upward mobility rate? And the worst one, Atlanta is the country's most unequal city again. Not my city. This is my hometown. That just can't be. The thing that makes me happy is that every day I get to come to work and I get to be the director of the Westside Communities Alliance. We pull together the liberal arts here at Georgia Tech. And yes, there's a College of Liberal Arts here at Georgia Tech. We pull that together with the College of Architecture and the Office of Government and Community Relations, because we need the built environment and the humanities to be working together to address some of these issues. But this is an image of us getting an award by the University System of Georgia. We were the Team of the Year. We got the Gold Award for Service Excellence. And that made me feel so amazing. And I just want to share with you that one of the things that was so great about that is that, I felt like when we get recognized, we don't want to be the academic team that retreats and we're only within the academic space and we're not bringing our community partners. And I remember that day that we had two community partners there, Michael Johnson from the West End and Shahid Dubois, who's from Vine City. And I'm sad to say that he's not with us anymore, but he was a Vine City champion. He was amazing. He was involved in at least 5 of the organizations that we work with on a regular basis. And I would be remiss to not actually acknowledge that he was one of our heroes and continues to guide us in this work. But our day-to-day work, we're in this kind of uniform. We're in spaces where we're in jeans and T-shirts, and we're making sure that folks know that Georgia Tech cares about what's happening on the West Side, and that we want to be involved in supporting the organizations and the neighborhood associations and the business associations in being successful in improving and enhancing their own communities. This is where we do a lot of our work, and I want to talk to you about some of the community champions, again, that we get to work with every day. When we first got started, Mother Mamie Moore and Sister Tracy Bates in English Avenue, they were some of the first folks to welcome us in. And that's a kitchen table for those of you all who can't recognize in the picture. And that's typically where most of the really good planning work goes down. But the thing I love about Tracy and Mother Moore is that they do all of the different types of work. They understand that community development is not just about the built structures that you see. It's not just about civic engagement, but they recognize that it has to be something about human connection. And so my favorite event, it was one of the first events I went to, was the Festival of Lights. And what they decided to do was, instead of allowing people to set the narrative about what was going on in their communities, they have a parade and they have a big fair where people are tabling, sharing information, dance contests, you name it. And they bring Georgia Tech professors that they work with into that space and say, if you want to do research with us, that's fine. But you're actually going to have to share that research with the people who live in these communities. You're actually going to have to be present in the spaces, not just collecting the information, not just collecting the data, right? But working with us and helping us to solve some of the issues that we've already identified for ourselves. So Festival of Lights was one of the first places that I got to go. They have a Black History program every year. And here's the thing, you don't just get to come and volunteer, not in their communities. I had to sit at that kitchen table time after time, hours after hours. They wanted to make sure that we were actually on the same page. They didn't take, hey, I want to partner with you, very lightly. They wanted to understand that the things that I wanted to partner with them on actually made sense for the issues and the concerns that they already identified. That, to me, is so significant. And I appreciated that they said, no, you don't get to just volunteer in my community. There's an orientation. And your professors can go to the orientation, and your students can go to the orientation, and the people who are on the street that we identified that need some connection, they're going to go through the orientation too. Everybody has the same process, but we expect you to show up. We expect you to be there. We expect you to do your work. And when I got to be in those spaces, and they taught me over time that you have to grow a relationship with organizations. It's not enough to just say, I'm at this institution and I have these resources. You have to grow that relationship. And after about 1.5 years, I asked them, would you participate in something that we're putting together? So one of the things that's amazing about Georgia Tech is that we have these sustained, focused studios. So in the College of Architecture, we'll have graduate students who, for an entire semester, focus on one area, they focus on one issue. They delve into it so deeply, get all the research, and then they put together a report. The same thing happens in the Ivan Allen College. They're taking technology and figuring out how we can use it for civic engagement, but they're working with our community partners to figure out how to use this technology to actually address the ways in which people are engaging now and helping to move that forward. So we decided to do something similar, the Westside Communities Alliance. We had our own community studio where we invited 14 partners across neighborhoods, across NPUs, to be able to work with professors, to be able to talk with them at length. Because oftentimes what happens is professors are here, they're on a panel, they say something really great, they've done some really great research, and after it's over, you can come to the mic and say something, and then they're gone. So we figured it was good to be able to have good, sustained, long conversations where our partners were able to really get the academic expertise that we said we had to offer. Well, the first people to sign up were Tracy Bates and Mother Moore and the historic Westside Cultural Arts Council. And going through that process, 12 long weeks, 1 day a week, 3 hours, was amazing, because when we got to the other end of it and people got a sense of who was in the room, we also were being watched. So another partner came out of that. At the end of our studio, one of our partners now, Sister Precious Muhammad, walked us over to a storefront. And we had been saying, we have got to move to a place where we have a presence in the community. We want to make sure that people know that they can access, that there's a point of entry, that they can connect not only with Georgia Tech, but these are communities surrounded by Georgia State and the Atlanta University Center. And so we really wanted to have a presence in the community, but we weren't able to work it out. And so this partner came and basically took us to a storefront that she owned, that was empty, and said, do something. Use this space, make it useful for this community. We had 6 computers at our office and a little bit of money, and we opened a community computer lab, free to the community, internet accessible. And so this actually is one of the things that we've been working on over the past year that has been just heart work, because we have the opportunity not only to share what we have, technology, and really it boiled down to 6 laptops, a space, some wireless, and electricity, and the water's on. And for the basics, we were able to open a computer lab 3 times a week, 4 hours each of those days. And the beauty of it is we get to see the types of things that regular residents need, want. And we're at one of the busiest intersections on Atlanta's Westside. We're on Martin Luther King and near the corner of Joseph Lowry. So it's high foot traffic, MARTA accessible, right near high school, right near Washington Park. It's right in the mix of all things. So we have so many people that come in who are doing job applications, who are doing education work. They're trying to fill out their college applications. They're, some young kids who are working on computer games, you name it. But JJ is the one who comes just about every week. He probably comes 2 times a week. And he would fill out these online applications that took hours. I mean, literally hours. And they would be maybe for a fast food restaurant or for service work. But we were stunned at how long it took. And so we started talking to him about some of the issues with doing these online applications. And he said, yeah, I get through the process. I fill out the application. I get an interview, hop on MARTA, and I go all over town to try to do these interviews. And as soon as I show up, the employer looks at me and decides, I can't hire you. So he has made all the effort and done everything right, is going all over town. And see, we get unemployment numbers, but they don't help us to understand some of the reasons why people are having difficulties getting jobs. And so he came up with the idea of having a job fair for people with disabilities. Now that is something that we can do. That is something that we can connect with a professor who does that kind of work. We can connect with student organizations, with classes, you name it. That's something that we can do. But these ideas don't necessarily have to come out of our colleges and universities. They come directly from our communities. And so JJ, for us, he taught us about ways that we can actually be having a real impact on some of the issues that are happening. But just working with JJ, we also recognize that we have to use our technology also in a way to give our community something that they definitely don't have and maybe can't do for themselves. So we've developed this technology platform called a data dashboard, because one of the things that we've also learned is that people come and they study and they study and they study. These communities have been studied and planned to death. But sometimes the information that is gleaned from these communities goes into scholarly journals or goes into a magazine or someplace that's not necessarily accessible. And we want to make sure that there's a place where people are able to easily access that information. But we also want to make it easier for our community partners to be able to learn about what's happening and be able to pull demographic information, be able to pull the social characteristics of their own community, because it is important that the people who are in these communities are able to tell their own data stories. It is important that within 5 clicks that they can get the information that they need, particularly when they're having to seek funding constantly. So we are talking about organizations that do tireless work, Monday through Sunday sometimes. They don't have additional time and they barely have resources. And they really need to be able to get to the information as quickly as possible. So we have a community profile that tells you very quickly population, age, race, the education levels, unemployment, you name it. We have information about the businesses that are available, workforce development programs. We have ways that you can look at the historic timeline and understand what has happened over time in these communities. How did some of the communities get to the point where they are? And then we have some of the basic information of when did some of these communities were more integrated at a certain point. Some of these communities had very stable housing. How did we get to a place where vacancy and unemployment and all of these issues are what they are? So one of the reasons, again, when we think about putting together this technology and putting together our data dashboard, the things that we think about are the organizations that we work with that can best use it. And so I wanted to talk to you about Raising Expectations. They're an organization that we've been working with really closely over the last year because education is such a significant issue. And these are folks that, you know, the young people that they work with, they go out and recruit. They knock on doors. They talk to parents, aunties, grandmas, daddies, uncles, cousins, anybody to get these kids into the program. They work with elementary, middle, and high school students. And one of the things that's amazing about them is that they push their kids and empower them to be able to speak out about what's going on. So in this image, what you'll see are young people talking about yet another Westside school that's being closed. And they're pleading, they're begging, they're saying, please, we need these spaces. We need to be able to hold on to our schools. And they're speaking up, and this is something that we try to do and support and create spaces for. And so this was our Community Spirit Day, a day that we wanted to get out into Charles Harper Memorial Park, first principal of the first ever African American public school that was built in Georgia to educate African Americans. We wanted to take the time to connect our elders who can explain to them how that park got built, and then also to have these young people be able to explain, you know, why it was important for them to keep their school. These are the types of connections that we have the opportunity to make. But we also work with Raising Expectations to do canvassing, because technology and data, they can give you all of this information, but it's not the same thing as talking to somebody directly on the street and asking, what is it that you need? What is it that you want to see here? And the thing that I think is amazing is that they'll tell you some of the basics. We want public service, help for the homeless. Like, these things are stunning that just within a mile, it's probably less than a mile of downtown, that these are some of the things that folks are asking for. When the projected development over the next couple of years in Atlanta, we're looking at $1.4 billion project with the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. But on the west side of Northside Drive, we're talking about $55 million for historic Mims Park, $43 million for the Westside Beltline Trail, $38 million for the Westside Reservoir Park, and other millions that are going into the new Tyler Perry film studios. There's so much money and so much resources, but, you know, we have these colleges and universities as well. If we have all of this money and all of these resources, and I'm going to name them: Spelman College, Morehouse College, Clark Atlanta University, Interdenominational Theological Center, Morehouse School of Medicine, Georgia State, Georgia Tech. These are the institutions that surround the communities that I'm talking about. So coupled with those resources, as well as having all of this academic expertise, if we can't solve for income inequality, then it's not because we don't have the resources and academic expertise. It's because quite possibly we don't have the will to do it. The problem with progress oftentimes is that it is coupled with displacement. There are so many African Americans who have been displaced from this city. The West Side, in many ways, is almost like the final frontier. We have to step up in this moment, because progress does not have to be coupled with displacement. If, in fact, we can listen to our West Side resident from the 1960s who said, couple our progress with genuine equality, then quite frankly, we don't have to worry about this wave of development actually washing these communities away. It's an opportunity for us to lift all boats. There's 36% residential vacancy in the communities that we focus on in MPU's L, K, and T on average. There is room for growth. There is a way that we can literally embrace these communities, address the challenges of jobs, housing, education, and attract people into these communities as well. But it requires us to actually really focus on doing it and putting our resources into making it happen. But I truly believe that if we take the time and the effort and we work together, that if we coordinate ourselves, that the headlines will then read, "Atlanta turns the tide on inequality, a West Side story." Thank you.